I never thought a simple question could unravel everything I'd been holding together for so long. But there I was, sitting in Marcus's dorm room at 2 in the morning, both of us supposedly studying for our biology final, when he looked up from his textbook and asked, "Hey, why don't you ever talk about girls?" The question hung in the air between us like a held breath. My pen stopped moving across my notebook. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, that familiar rush of panic and something else, something deeper, something I'd been pushing down for months. "What do you mean?" I asked, buying time, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. Marcus leaned back in his desk chair, stretching his arms above his head. He was wearing that faded Cornell hoodie he practically lived in, the one that made his eyes look impossibly green. "I mean, we've been roommates since September. It's almost December. We talk about everything, man. Your family, my crazy ex-girlfriend drama, our classes, philosophy, life, death, the meaning of existence." He smiled, that easy smile of his. "But you never mention dating, never check anyone out, never complain about being single. It's just, I don't know, different." Different. That word carried so much weight. I'd spent my entire life trying not to be different, trying to blend in, trying to be exactly what everyone expected, and I'd gotten good at it. Really good. Too good, maybe, because now I had this friendship with Marcus that meant everything to me, and I was terrified of what the truth might do to it. "I'm just focused on school," I said, the lie tasting bitter. "My dad's paying a fortune for me to be here. Can't really afford distractions." Marcus nodded slowly, but something in his expression told me he wasn't buying it. He had this way of looking at people, really seeing them. That made it hard to hide. It was one of the things I loved about him, even as it scared me. "Fair enough," he said, but he didn't look away. "It's just, you can talk to me about anything, right? I mean, we're friends. Real friends." Real friends. God, if he only knew how many times I'd replayed that phrase in my head, trying to convince myself that friendship was enough, that I could keep feeling what I felt without it destroying everything. "I know," I said, forcing myself to meet his eyes. "Same goes for you." He held my gaze for a moment longer, and I swear something passed between us, something unspoken and electric. Then he grinned and went back to his textbook. "Good. Now help me understand cellular respiration, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to fail this exam." I laughed, grateful for the escape route, and we dove back into studying. But the question stayed with me, echoing in the spaces between our conversations, in the comfortable silences we shared, in the moments when our hands accidentally brushed, reaching for the same highlighter. That was 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks of carrying this weight, of watching Marcus date a girl from his chemistry class, of smiling and being supportive while something inside me quietly shattered. 3 weeks of lying awake in my bed across the room from his, listening to him breathe in the darkness, wanting to say something, anything, but never finding the courage. Until tonight. Finals are over. Most people have already left campus for winter break, but Marcus and I both have late flights tomorrow. The dorm is almost empty, quiet in a way it never is during the semester. We'd ordered pizza, watched a movie, fallen into our usual easy rhythm, but I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about going home for 3 weeks, about the distance that would create, about how maybe when we came back things would be different, and I'd lose my chance to ever be honest with him. "You're quiet tonight," Marcus said, closing his laptop. We were both on his bed, which had become our default hangout spot. Mine was always covered in books and papers. Everything okay? This was it. This was the moment. I could feel it in my bones, that now or never urgency that comes when you've been holding something in for so long that it starts to poison you from the inside. "Can I ask you something?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Always." What would you say if one of your friends told you they were gay? I felt him go still beside me. The air in the room changed, became heavier, more charged. I couldn't look at him. I stared at my hands instead, at the way they were trembling slightly. Is this about you? He asked quietly. The question was so direct, so gentle that it nearly broke me. I nodded, still not looking up. Yeah, it's about me. The silence that followed felt endless. I counted my heartbeats, 1, 2, 3, 4, waiting for him to say something, to move, to leave, to tell me this changed everything. Okay, he said finally, just that one word, soft and accepting. I risked a glance at him. He was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between concern and something else I didn't dare name. Okay, I repeated. Yeah, okay. Thank you for telling me. He shifted slightly, turning more toward me. That must have been really hard to say. You have no idea, I said, and suddenly I was talking, words spilling out like a dam had broken. I've known since I was 14, maybe longer. I've never told anyone, not my parents, not my friends back home, nobody. I came to college thinking maybe I could just, I don't know, figure it out on my own, but then I met you and we became friends, and it's been amazing but also really hard because I stopped myself, realizing I was about to say too much, to cross a line I couldn't uncross. Because what? Marcus asked. I shook my head. Nothing, just, it's been hard keeping this secret. He was quiet for a moment and I could see him processing, thinking. Is that why you've seemed kind of distant lately? Since I started seeing Emma? God, he'd noticed. Of course he'd noticed. Maybe a little, I admitted. Why? The question was so simple, but answering it meant stepping off a cliff with no idea if there was ground below or just empty air. Because it's hard to watch you with someone else when, I took a shaky breath, when I have feelings for you. There, I'd said it. The truth I'd been carrying alone for months, the secret that had been eating me alive, was out there in the open, irreversible and terrifying. Marcus didn't say anything. The silence stretched between us, and I wanted to take it back, to rewind time, to be anywhere but here in this moment of excruciating vulnerability. I'm sorry, I said quickly. I shouldn't have said that. I needed to be honest with you, but I don't expect anything. I know you're straight and you're with Emma, and I'm not trying to make things weird. I just couldn't keep lying to you. I'm not with Emma, Marcus said quietly. I looked up at him, confused. What? I broke up with her last week. It wasn't working out. Oh, I didn't know. You didn't say anything. Neither did you, he pointed out, and there was something in his voice, a gentleness that made my chest ache. About any of this. I was scared, I admitted. I'm still scared. You're my best friend, Marcus. The thought of losing you because of this, because of who I am, it's been killing me. He reached out then, his hand covering mine where it rested on the bedspread. The touch sent electricity through me, warm and grounding and utterly overwhelming. You're not going to lose me, he said. I meant what I said before. We're real friends. This doesn't change that. But it changes everything, I said, my voice breaking slightly. Maybe, he agreed, but not in the way you think. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his expression that made my breath catch. What do you mean? He seemed to be struggling with something, his thumb absently tracing circles on the back of my hand. Can I tell you something, and you have to promise not to freak out? Okay, I said, though my heart was racing. That question I asked you 3 weeks ago about why you never talked about girls, I asked it because I'd been wondering about you, about us, about why I cared so much about whether you were interested in anyone. He paused, taking a breath. About why I got so jealous when Jake from your English class asked if you wanted to study together. My mind was reeling. You were jealous? Yeah, and I didn't understand why at first. I told myself it was just because you're my best friend and I didn't want some random guy taking up all your time. But then I realized I was also relieved when you said no to him. And I started paying attention to how I felt around you. Really paying attention, and I realized something. What? I whispered, barely able to form the word. I think the reason I couldn't make things work with Emma, or with Sarah before her, or with anyone I've dated, is because I've been comparing them all to you, to how I feel when I'm with you, how easy it is, how right it feels, how much I look forward to just existing in the same space as you. I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. This was the kind of thing that happened in movies, in stories, not in real life. Not to me. I don't understand, I said. You're straight. Marcus laughed, but it was shaky, uncertain. I thought I was. I mean, I've only ever dated girls. But lately I've been questioning that. Questioning a lot of things. And when you just told me how you feel, I felt this rush of relief, like finally something made sense. Marcus, I said, his name coming out like a prayer, like a question, like everything I'd ever wanted to say but couldn't. I'm not saying I have it all figured out, he continued, his hand still holding mine. I don't know what I am, what label fits, but I know how I feel about you. And I think I've been feeling it for a while now. I just didn't let myself acknowledge it because it scared me, because it was different from anything I'd experienced before. There it was again. Different. But this time the word didn't feel like a burden. It felt like possibility. So what are you saying? I asked, needing to hear it clearly, needing to be sure this was real. He moved closer and I could feel the warmth of him, could smell the familiar scent of his laundry detergent, and something uniquely him. I'm saying that I have feelings for you too, and I want to explore what that means if you're willing to be patient with me while I figure this out. Tears were streaming down my face before I even realized I was crying. Relief, joy, disbelief, all of it crashing over me in waves. I've been patient for months, I said, laughing through the tears. I can be patient a little longer. Marcus reached up and gently wiped my tears away with his thumb, his touch so tender it made my heart ache. I'm sorry you've been carrying this alone. I wish you'd felt like you could tell me sooner. I was terrified of losing you. You couldn't lose me if you tried, he said softly. You're kind of stuck with me now. I laughed again, and he smiled. That beautiful smile that had been undoing me since the day we met. We sat there for a moment just looking at each other, and it felt like the world had shifted on its axis, like everything was different now, but also somehow more right than it had ever been. Can I kiss you? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. My breath caught. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and he leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. But I didn't want to pull away. I'd been moving toward this moment for months, without even knowing it was possible. When his lips met mine, it was soft and tentative and absolutely perfect. My first kiss with a boy. My first kiss with Marcus. My first kiss where I felt completely, authentically myself. It was brief, just a few seconds, but when he pulled back, we were both smiling. Wow, he said. Yeah, I agreed. Wow. We spent the rest of the night talking, really talking, about everything we'd been holding back. Marcus told me about his confusion over the past few months, about how he'd catch himself staring at me during study sessions, about how he'd started researching sexuality and identity online at 3 a.m. I told him about growing up feeling different, about the loneliness of hiding who I was, about the fear that had become my constant companion, and somewhere in those early morning hours, curled up together on his bed, talking and occasionally kissing and just being honest with each other, I felt something I'd never felt before. Freedom. The freedom to be completely myself with someone who saw me, really saw me, and didn't turn away. What happens now? I asked as the sky outside started to lighten with the approaching dawn. We're both going home tomorrow, 3 weeks apart. Marcus tightened his arm around me. We figure it out. We talk every day. We're honest with each other. And when we come back in January, we see where this goes. What about other people? Are we telling people? He thought about that for a moment. I think we take it slow. I need time to figure out what this means for me, how I want to identify, how to talk about it with my family. But I don't want to hide you. I don't want to hide this. So maybe we're honest when it comes up, but we don't make some big announcement. That works for me, I said. I'm not ready to come out to my parents yet anyway. But Marcus, I'm really glad I told you. Even if you hadn't felt the same way, I'm glad I was honest. Me too, he said, pressing a kiss to my forehead. You're brave. You know that? Braver than me. I don't feel brave. I feel terrified. That's what makes it brave. Doing it even though you're scared. We must have fallen asleep eventually because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through the window and my phone was buzzing with a reminder about my flight. Marcus was still asleep next to me, his face peaceful and younger looking in the morning light. I let myself just watch him for a moment, marveling at the fact that this was real, that I hadn't dreamed it. He stirred, opening his eyes and smiling when he saw me. Hey yourself. So last night really happened? Yeah, I said, my own smile growing. It really happened. We had to rush to get ready and make our flights, but we kept stealing glances at each other, kept finding excuses to touch, to connect. At the airport, saying goodbye was harder than I expected. 3 weeks, Marcus said, pulling me into a hug that lasted just a little too long to be purely platonic. 3 weeks, I echoed. Call me when you land. Absolutely. I watched him walk toward his gate, and just before he turned the corner, he looked back and waved. I waved back, my heart so full it felt like it might burst. The flight home was surreal. I kept replaying the night before in my mind, touching my lips where he'd kissed me, reading and rereading the text he'd sent. Already missing you. This is going to be the longest 3 weeks of my life. Being home was strange. Everything looked the same, but I felt fundamentally different. I wasn't ready to tell my parents yet, wasn't ready for those conversations, but I felt lighter somehow, less burdened by secrets. Marcus and I talked every day, sometimes for hours. We texted constantly. We fell asleep on video calls, just wanting to be in each other's presence, even across the distance. And slowly, carefully, we started talking about the future, about what it meant to be together, about how to navigate our identities, about the courage it would take to live authentically. Marcus started coming out to a few close friends from home, testing the waters. I wasn't there yet, but I supported him, proud of every step he took. On New Year's Eve, we were on a video call when midnight struck in his time zone. I wish I could kiss you right now, he said, his face pixelated on my screen, but his meaning clear. 2 more weeks, I said. Then you can kiss me all you want, he laughed. I'm going to hold you to that. When I finally got back to campus in January, Marcus was already there, waiting outside our dorm. The moment I saw him, everything else fell away. I dropped my bags and ran to him, and he caught me in his arms, lifting me slightly off the ground as he held me tight. I missed you so much, he said into my shoulder. I missed you too. We pulled back just enough to look at each other, and then he kissed me right there in the parking lot, not caring who might see, and I kissed him back with everything I had. That was 6 months ago. We're still figuring things out, still learning how to be together, how to be ourselves. Marcus came out to his parents as bisexual over spring break. It was hard, but they were supportive. I'm not there yet with my family, but I'm working toward it, building my courage one day at a time. What I know now is that the question Marcus asked that night, "Why don't you ever talk about girls?" was the beginning of everything. It was the crack in my carefully constructed armor that let the light in. It was the moment that started us on this path toward authenticity, toward each other, toward a future I'm no longer afraid to imagine. Because sometimes the scariest questions lead to the most beautiful answers. And sometimes being different isn't something to hide from, it's something to celebrate. Sometimes the person you're most afraid to tell is exactly the person who needed to hear it, who was waiting for permission to be honest too. I still get scared sometimes. Coming out is a process, not a single moment, and every new person I tell feels like a risk. But I have Marcus beside me now, and I have the knowledge that I survived my biggest fear and found something incredible on the other side. So to anyone out there carrying a secret that feels too heavy to bear, to anyone afraid of what the truth might cost them, I want you to know that I understand. I see you. And while I can't promise it will be easy, I can promise that living honestly, being truly yourself, is worth every moment of fear. Because on the other side of that fear is freedom. And maybe, if you're lucky like me, love too.